welcome back to my channel. Miss Crochet and Coffee here, and today we will be talking about the zigzag puff stitch. Now this stitch is a little bit more advanced, but I'm pretty sure with these steps, if you follow closely, you will be able to get this stitch no problem. This week has essentially been kind of a puffy week for us, so I figured what better way to end the week than with a puffy zigzag. This will put a twist on any project you're working on. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have a super bulky yarn here, which is a size 6. And first thing we're going to do, of course, is make our slip stitch. So we're going to twist that, insert our thumb into there, grab the working strand and pull up. And it's okay if it has a longer tail. It's not going to affect anything. You can always trim it off later. So with the puffy zigzag stitch, you want to have a multiple of 3, which means your chain has to be a multiple of 3, and then you're going to add 3 to that, and you'll see why. So I'm going to start off with a chain of 15. Now you don't want to make this super big, or the stitch is super tight, so we're going to make them a little looser because it's going to be easier to go into the stitches as you're going along and working into those stitches. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right. So we have our chain of 15, and I forgot to mention this is a Susan Bates size 5.5. that I'm using for this tutorial. And now we're going to turn our work. Now that we have our chain of 15, like I said, you want multiples of 3, then add 3. So obviously that would be a chain of 12 with an extra 3 stitches. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip those first 3 chains. The first 2 that we're skipping is going to be our half double crochet. That third one, I'll give you I'll let you know what that's going to be here in a few minutes. But for right now, we are going to double crochet in the 4th stitch from the hook. So as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to double crochet. So if you forgot how to do that, we're going to show you here. I'll slow it down a little bit. We're going to yarn over. We're going to insert our hook through the stitch. We're going to yarn over again and then bring up that loop. So now you should have 3 loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And it might be a little bit more difficult with a bulkier yarn because you have more strands coming at you than you would with a normal Super Saver Red Heart yarn, which is only a size 4. And there is a big difference between this size and the size 4. So it might be a little bit harder to make sure you get all the strands. So just make sure that you're not dragging any of the strands. So now that we've did our first double crochet into the 4th stitch, remember that stitch I told you we'd figure out what that is in a few minutes? Well, now you're going to figure out what that is. In order to make your zigzags ziggy, you have to work kind of backwards. And I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to do a puff stitch into that 3rd chain space that we skipped. Because remember, the first 2 are our half double crochet. So that 3rd one is for the puff stitch. So what we're going to do, and since we're using a bulkier yarn, I'm not going to do too many loops up. So we're going to yarn over. We're going to go into that 3rd stitch. So we're just going to go right in front of that that double crochet we just made. We're going to yarn over and draw up a loop, and you want to make sure it's nice and tall. We're going to yarn over again in that same stitch. We're going to go into again. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull it through to draw up that loop. And again, it might be a little bit more difficult with the super bulky yarn. Just make sure you get all your strands, and we're going to pull that one up, and we're going to do it one more time. So we're going to go into it, draw up a loop. Make sure they're nice and tall. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull it through. And again, this part might be a little bit more difficult. Just wiggle that hook around to make sure you got all those strands. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to finish that off there. Pull that off there. Next, we're going to go into the next stitch, but we're going to skip a stitch. And then in the second stitch from that from that double crochet we made, we're going to yarn over and make a double crochet into there. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 of the loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 of the loops, just like that. And then we're going to make another puff stitch, but we're going to make it in that first one that we skipped. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, we're going to yarn over. And like I said, this is a little bit difficult with the bulkier yarn, so you're going to want to practice this before you go making anything with it, just to make sure you got the hang of it. So we're going to insert that, yarn over, draw up a loop, yarn over, insert, draw up another loop, and then one more time. Make sure they're nice and tall. And then we're going to pull it through. And again, you just want to make sure you're not catching any extra strands. Sorry about that. That's my dog. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. So then we're going to finish that puff stitch off. And then we're going to do the same thing throughout the rest of the stitches. So we're going to skip the next stitch, go into the second stitch, do a double crochet. We're going to yarn over, and then we're going to go back to that skip stitch and do a puff stitch. So 1, draw it up nice and tall, 2, draw it up nice and tall, and 3. And it does get a little bit harder, as you can see, with the bulkier yarn, because those stitches tend to get really tight when you put so many into them. So we're going to draw that up, make sure it's nice and tall there. Yarn over, pull through the loops, and just give it a little twist if it's getting caught on the other strands. Just like that. And we're just going to keep going. I'll meet you back at the end. Alright, so now that we got back to the end, and as you can see, the puff stitches are starting to slant. For the last stitch, we are going to do a simple half double crochet. And all you do is yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, draw through, yarn over, pull through all 3 stitches on your hook. And then we're going to chain 2. Now the second round is going to be worked into the chain stitches on top of the puff stitches. But for this first one, we did still skip a stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip this space and go into the top of this space. So we're going to yarn over and do 1 double crochet into the top of the puff stitch. So draw through 2, draw through 2. And then in this space between the puff stitch and the half double, we're going to do our puff stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, draw up a loop, yarn over, draw up a loop, and one more time, yarn over, draw up a loop. Make sure they're nice and uniform. And then we're going to pull through all the loops on your hook. And you don't have to use a bulky yarn for this stitch. You can use a regular worsted weight yarn to get your stitches to be a little bit more puffy. You're going to probably want to do more than 3 loops into the stitch. You're probably going to do more like 4 or 5, and that's okay. It's just to give you a puffier look. So now we're going to go ahead and skip this space and go into the next puff stitch. So we're going to double crochet into the top of the next puff stitch. And then we're going to go back, and right in between those 2 puff stitches, we're going to do a puff stitch. So 1, 2, 3. Just like so. And then we're going to pull that through, and again, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle if you have to. And if at any time, again, you need to stop, pause the video, check your stitches, check your pattern to make sure you're doing it correctly, please feel free to do so. There's no rush. This is at your own leisure. All right, so as you probably know by now, we're going to go into the next puff stitch with the double crochet. And the double crochets are to give our puff stitches some height so that they're not little stubby puff stitches. We want them to pop. So we're going to yarn over, insert, draw through. Make sure I get all my strands on there. Yarn over, insert, draw through. And again, make sure all your strands are on there. And again, you probably won't have these issues if you're using a worsted weight yarn, mainly because there's not as many strands and they're easier to see. With the bulkier yarn, the strands tend to come apart sometimes, so you might have to take your time doing it. Which is, again, that's fine. We all work at our own pace. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. We're going to yarn over and into the next puff stitch. Double crochet. Find that next skip space. We're going to puff stitch. Uh-oh. We're going to try that one more time because we went into the stitch. We're going to yarn over, draw through, yarn over, draw through, yarn over, draw through. Make sure they're nice and uniform. And then we're going to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And as you can see, these puff stitches are starting to go this way while the other ones are going that way, which creating the zigzag. So that's how you know you're also doing it right. That, and you want to make sure you're not, if you're like, say in this instance, I'd be making a scarf. You want to make sure everything is uniform in the fact that if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 puff stitches down here, that means I'm going to have 6 puff stitches on this top section that I'm working on now. So, we're going to yarn over top of the puff stitch, double crochet. We're going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Finish that off. Then we're going to go here. Sorry about that little interruption there. But as you can see, we're still in that last puff stitch. And we're going to make our last double crochet of this round. Or this row, I'm sorry. Double crochet, and then in that last space we're going to do our last puff stitch. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Finish that one off. And now that we're at the end of the round, we're going to find the first stitch of your chain and make our half double crochet to end this row. So right here. This will make sure that your edges are completely straight. And we'll do one more row together and then I'll let you go on your way. But as you can see, it's starting to zigzag. So let's do one more round. Let's see if you guys can get this and work it with me. Or if you're just watching, feel free to practice. This is a stitch you're going to want to practice before you dive into any big projects, because you want to make sure that you can do it and keep everything uniform and straight. So what we're going to do now is we're going to identify where our first puff stitch is going to go, which is going to go right in there. And then we're going to double crochet at the top of that first puff stitch. So just a regular double crochet there. And then we're going to puff stitch here. Oh, we're going to try that one more time. And we're going to pull that through. 1, 2, 3. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Finish that one off. And then move on to the next one. So the next one, we're going to find the top of that puff stitch. We're going to double crochet. We're going to find where we're going to put our puff stitch. Going to go in, draw up a loop, yarn over, go in, draw up a loop. One more time, yarn over, go in, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through all up. Hold on 1 second. As you can tell, it's a little bit harder working with the bulkier strand, and that's okay. Just take some practice. And that just shows you not even I am perfect. I've been doing this for many years and still I have issues with it sometimes. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle through all those stitches. Finish that off. And you see how that side, the edge, looks perfectly straight? Just keep following the steps. And don't worry if you don't get it on the first try. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries. So we're going to yarn over, we're going to insert, yarn over, insert, pull up, get that on there, yarn over, insert, pull up, yarn over, wiggle, 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 finish that off, move on to the next one. Once you get the hang of this stitch, it's pretty easy to do it, and you'll realize that even though it is a little bit more of an advanced stitch, it's not that hard to complete. A lot of the stitches aren't if you just take your time. Oh, sorry. Probably confusing you there. So we're making the puff stitch now. So we're going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert, yarn over, draw up another loop, get all your strands on there. And with all the snow that I've been seeing around, this would make a great stitch to make a throw blanket for your couch, maybe a blanket for a bed, scarf. I'm pretty sure you can make just about anything out of this stitch, like most crochet stitches. So then we're at the end now. So then what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over and make our half double crochet into that first chain from the previous row. And there you have it, folks. You have your puff stitch. And you see how it zigzags? This first round goes this way while the other one goes this way, while the first one goes this way. It will go back and forth like that the entire way of your project as long as you follow these steps. And you want to make sure you're not increasing or decreasing unless the pattern you're working calls for it. But I would highly suggest using a swatch tester for this stitch because it is a little bit more of an advanced stitch and you want to make sure you have it down perfectly before you go making any project. And that's with any project. You want to make sure you do a swatch first and then work the project. It's the same theory as measure twice, cut once. You want to swatch twice, execute the pattern once, because you don't want to have to get started with the pattern and then take it all apart because you couldn't execute it correctly because you weren't sure of how to go which way. So we're going to show you how to do it the next round for the fourth round, and then I'll let you be on your way. So again, let's count our puffs. We should have 6 puffs on each row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good job. If you have more puff stitches than you're supposed to, check and see where you added that extra puff stitch. Correct your mistakes. Feel free to pause the video at any time to give yourself enough time to work on it. It is not a race. It is not a test. You can do this at your leisure. So let's move on, if you're ready, to the next row. So again, we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. That counts as your first double or half double crochet. And then we're going to find the top of the space for that puff stitch and do a double crochet. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, draw up that first loop, and we're going to do that 2 more times. 1 more time. Now we're going to play the wiggle game. We're going to go in and wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And don't worry if your hook for some reason loses the strand or whatever, you can always go back and take it apart and try it 1 more time. So we got our first puff. So we're going to go into the next puff with a double crochet. And at this point you should start to get the pattern down. And then we're going to make our puff stitch. Could you imagine this in a nice soft blanket for your couch? That would be amazing. And we're just going to keep going like this the whole way down. 2, 3. Close that off. Next stitch. One, 2, 3. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Finish that off. Double crochet into the next puff stitch. And then create a puff stitch. 1, 2, 3. We're gonna wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And yeah, you're welcome. That's probably gonna get stuck in your head now whenever you're making this pattern. And then we're gonna find that last puff stitch, do a double crochet. Make sure you're getting all those strands. 1, 2, 3. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Finish that off. And then to that last stitch down there from the chain, we're going to do a half double crochet. And that's yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull out a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on your hook. And there you have it. We have our puff stitch. More importantly, we have a zigzag puff stitch. So let's count that last row to make sure we have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we know we did that correctly. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I absolutely love doing these crochet tutorials, but show me how much you love it by hitting that like button. If you're not already a subscriber, please feel free to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified anytime I put up videos. Now, my channel, of course, is not just crochet tutorials. It is also diamond painting. So I do a lot of live videos, or I will be starting to do a lot of live videos at night. So they will be from 9 p.m. until about midnight Central Standard Time. If you would like to come join us and work on your project while we just sit and chit chat, we'd be more than happy to have you there and partake in some of the fun. I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. So again, thank you so much for watching this. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. My name is Miss Crochet and Coffee, and I will see you guys in my next tutorial. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye-bye.